Welcome, and thanks for joining me today on Mortgage Manager Playbook, a podcast for sales leaders who want to improve their team's sales performance and originate more loans. I'm Pat Sherlock, your host. Today's topic is what it means to be a solution-oriented loan officer. I have the perfect person, Connor Bartley, to share his wisdom. Connor is a senior recruiter at loanDepot. Prior to that, he was with Gateway Mortgage. Connor has a fabulous LinkedIn blog called Loan Officer Down. I highly recommend that you check it out. He posts great information on a regular basis. So Connor, talk to us about how you got into the world of mortgage banking.
Sure. Thank you, Pat, for having me on. It's an honor to be here. Like many people in mortgage, I got into it by accident. It wasn't planned at all. I was in the staffing business and had just finished a pretty successful run of oil and gas headhunting here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, getting geologists and reservoir engineer and jib accountants and engineer techs, hired into different oil companies. And then, the price per barrel dropped from about $110 a barrel down to the 30s. And that means layoffs, and that means hiring freezes, and that means I got to find something else, to do. So I pivoted and did more temp staffing and had actually learned of a local mortgage company that hired temps. And so I actually reached out to them to get a meeting to meet about, getting some staffing done over there. And what I got back in return was a request for an interview. So they brought me in to talk about recruiting for them and specifically, loan officer recruiting. Sat down, we talked for about 2 hours, and, it's always been more my speed to do direct hire, kind of higher level position, headhunting versus temp staffing. And so it was a great opportunity, and I took it, and here I am.
Well, that sounds like many types of paths that other people have taken, so we're all in the same boat. We come into it from different ways for sure. So talk about some of the challenges of your current position now, especially this market's been obviously a volatile market and a challenging market. So what are you seeing in the world of recruiting?
Mortgage recruiting is really competitive and at times can be, a full contact sport. You've got a ton of recruiters. I talk to some loan officers that get 6 to 10 phone calls a week from different companies. There's multiple offer situations. There's big offers being made. There's, headlines and rumors, and there's just a slew of headwinds that you face in mortgage recruiting to build trust and to kind of break through all the noise. I think another challenge really is that the recruiting pitch in mortgage has gotten kind of stale to the point where it sounds very similar. And that's not a knock on any recruiter out there. It's just very hard in that initial conversation to differentiate yourself when, all the same topics are what we want to hit on. Our tech is great, our turn times, our pricing, our products, things like that. So if you're getting that call 10 times a week, it can all start to sound very similar, and it's easy to tune out. And I think the final challenge that's really out there is change is hard. People don't want to do it. It's when you're a loan officer and you're facing the idea of changing, you're really looking at disrupting a lot of things. You've got relationships with realtors, you've got your past clients, you've got relationships with title companies, and all of that really factors into this decision, not to mention the familiarity that you already have with where you currently are at and have been for however long you've been there. So, a lot of people will tell me, Connor, I know who to call when I have a challenge. It would be really hard for me to give that up and walk into the unknown. And so, change is just difficult for people. And so it's really about building trust and a relationship and then letting things blossom from there.
Well, I think that leads into a great point about the world of trends that you're seeing in recruiting as far as going, not just this year, but going forward. What are some of the things that you think mortgage bankers should be aware of?
Well, I think as far as recruiting and what they'll see from recruiters, we're seeing more focus, and I think this is a welcome change, but there's more focus on bringing value and not value props. So, back to what I said earlier, where the pitch is getting stale, I think a lot of recruiters are recognizing that and instead really trying to work on what I call like a handshake to hug conversion. Okay. So that's just a term that means a deeper relationship, building a level of familiarity with somebody to where, when you first meet somebody, it's formal, you shake their hand. But if you feel like you know them, you just go in for the hug, right? So I feel like a trend that's happening out there is this ability to, and I'm stealing a term from a mortgage recruiting coach out there, Richard Milligan, which is surrogate leadership, stepping in as the leader and, assuming a role of manager with somebody by giving them advice, helping them achieve their goals, helping them, structure loans, whatever it may be, like just really kind of stepping in a surrogate leadership role to build that bridge to where one day that loan officer might go, you know what, I'm getting more value out of this person than the one I work for. I'll just go work for them. So I see that as one trend out there. Another would be, we've just got so much data, Pat. It's available. I know most companies are subscribing to it and they have it. And so the upside of that is it helps a recruiter be more organized, more tactical, more targeted, more intentional with who they're reaching out to and what they're planning on saying. I mean, I go back and think 8 years ago when I started recruiting, I had zero data. And all I had were LinkedIn accounts and your, consumer access NMLS number. And I could go look at work history, but I had no concept of what kind of production someone had or what the trends were in their production or how much of their business was FHA versus conventional or VA or jumbo or, you name it. And so now that the data is available to most mortgage companies, the recruiters, know the who's who. The upside, like I said, is it's, it helps you be more organized and tactical. The downside is, a lot of the top performers are getting, more calls. So, you see a lot of the recruiters kind of all going after the same candidate. So it can be a lot for somebody in that situation. And then I think the third trend is more social media and more awareness on brand and building a brand for yourself as a recruiter. And, that's something personally that I work on to become more of a known commodity is what I do. And as somebody that, is a safe person to talk to about, goals and dreams. And I'll always try to bring value.
Well, you raised a lot of good points for sure, and I think everyone can kind of relate to what you're talking about. And I think it's a great segue into our main topic today, especially since you talk to so many and have over the years. You frame it as the solo loan officer, which is the solution-oriented loan officer versus the problem-oriented loan officer, which is actually the opposite. So talk about this issue that how you have come up with and what indicates someone just by the phone conversation is a solution-oriented loan officer.
Right. So I talk to multiple loan officers a day, and I feel like this market has really kind of created two types of conversations. And I was thinking about it, just on a morning walk. I'm walking my dog. I do a lot of thinking while I walk him. And anyway, and I was just trying to, dissect what was it about the loan officers that really stood out that made them different, and what I was able to really figure out was, when I'm talking with somebody who's focused on the problems, the conversation typically talks, we talk about how high the rates are, how low inventory is in their market, that their company has layoffs, that their production's down, and just, the struggle, right? And then when you talk with somebody who's a little more solution focused, it's a very different conversation. Those challenges, those problems still exist, but they're not focused on the problem. They're focused on, they see an opportunity to learn new skills, to expand their brand, to build deeper relationships with their existing partners and new relationships with others, to go out and out hustle other originators that may be tired from, the 16, 18-hour days of 2020 and 21, right? They're getting more involved in their community. And so the trend that I noticed was the folks that I talked to that were solution oriented, more often than not, their production was actually growing and year over year from 2022 to 23 versus someone who's a little more focused on the problem side of things. We're seeing a decline in production. And so I looked at that, and I'm an acronym guy. I like to, make things easy for me to think of. And if you work backwards, you start with loan originator. So you got the LO there at the end. So what can I put in front of it, right? And so I thought, okay, solution oriented, naturally that's a solo. And then I go with problem obsessed loan originator because that's what those conversations were like. And those would be polos. And then just what sealed it for me was I was remembering a video that I saw on Instagram, just some random dude in his backyard next to a campfire talking about the plastic red Solo cup. Okay. And yeah, he was giving a demonstration that if you put an empty Solo in the will melt, and it will. But if it's full, if it's got water in it or any kind of liquid, it keeps its shape and it doesn't melt in the fire. And I thought, that's it, right? You've got Solos that are keeping their cup full with solutions, and they are surviving the fire of this industry, and the empty cup Polo is melting down. And so that kind of pulled it all together for me.
Yeah, I think that it's a great distinguishing of two types, and I agree with you 100%. Let me ask this question. Is this something over all the years you're recruiting, did you see that when you think back where there was more of the problem obsessed or orientated loan officer, or is it just now because of the market conditions that people are using this as an excuse, or has it been the same amount, they just are like that?
So I think there's always going to be a certain percentage of people that are different, that are exceptional, right? And I'd say it's a small percentage, maybe less than 20%, that really fall into a category of, I mean, you see it with the Scotsman guide, right? Like not everybody, it's usually the same names every year. So
Right.
maybe the numbers change and the rankings change a little bit, but there's a small percentage of people that are, charging after more. But that doesn't mean that everyone's goals are different, Pat. So I don't want to say that as a knock on anybody. Some people are happy with the level of production that they have, and they are just looking for ways to make it easier on themselves. And they're looking for ways. So higher production doesn't necessarily equal, higher performance. Some people are performing at a high level in that they're getting a lot done in not a lot of time because they found a really slick, efficient way of doing it, and they've found solutions in that way. But yeah, I would say that it's this market has exposed it a little bit more, but I think that has always been there. There's just something different about people that kind of, they have a switch or another gear that puts them in a different frame of mind, and they want to go after it.
And so that raises the question, because I see the same thing, and why I was interested when I was reading your blog on LinkedIn is that I see the same thing, and I find it probably interesting, and you would know this from calling different teams and different lenders, that you see it more in certain places than you see it in other places. We're obviously not going to name the places, but my point is, isn't it something that almost becomes a culture?
I believe so. I think naturally, people who are in that frame of mind will find each other
True.
because they're going to end up running in a lot of the same circles. If you think about it, we have all these conferences that take place within the industry all year round, different meetings that happen, and I often see a lot of the same people are saying that they're going to attend. Just following people on LinkedIn, you see, I'm going to see so-and-so in Las Vegas. I'm going to this thing in Dallas. And,
Mhm.
and you tend to see a lot of the same people going to the same events, and then everyone else doesn't. So I do think that in a sense, they're going to find each other one way or another. So, and the industry talk, at the end of the day, it's a small world out there.
Well, I find it interesting that, and I had a recent conversation myself, and I'm curious about what your thoughts are, is that I'm talking to a loan officer from a training perspective, and then I talk to their manager. And what you hear from the loan officer are the same reasons that you kind of cited on why they can't do it. And then when you actually talk to the manager, I'm hearing the same things. And
For
so
sure.
it's
Yeah.
so it almost leads itself to almost condoning that type of thinking. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, my thoughts on that are you are what you eat. And so that's part of what I think about what makes a solo different is they are pursuing different perspective and pursuing knowledge and just looking outside and collaboration, which I think is really the key part of it. But it's really interesting how sometimes this industry can get very protective of their ideas and secrets. And I think we're in a situation where we should be open to sharing to for the greater good. I mean, the customer wins, the referral partner wins, everyone wins. And so I do think that, if you're in a culture where that is not promoted, then you're kind of just stuck in the company bubble. You get what you get. It's eye-opening how many people, from a recruiting perspective too, Pat, are very like they feel everything's the same at every company,
Mhm.
and it couldn't be more different out there. So I get what they're saying. A lot of times it sounds the same, but there are a lot of very small differences from company to company that can make a huge difference for an originator out there.
Well, I find it interesting, Connor, that you talk about that the solution orientated loan officer is more willing to, in other words, share, collaborate, do it for the greater good. And I know that you've started a group that's involved with that, or you've been involved with that. And how do you see that, or what's been your experience with the sharing of whatever's supposed to be secrets?
Yeah, so we're just getting started with organizing that and getting some things off the ground. But I mean, the culture of that it's great because in the end, sharing one idea could trigger someone else to think of something else. And the brainstorming process it's, it's a special one. You might come up with a ton of really bad ideas, but if you hit on one really good one, then you're on to something, right? And I think there's just like an athlete who realizes they're going to miss a lot of shots. I played. I'm not going to make it sound like I was some great basketball player growing up. I quit my sophomore year of high school, but I enjoyed playing basketball. And you have to get comfortable with missing shots to take more shots. To be someone
Sure.
who's going to score a lot of points. So I think there's just a different mentality among some people who are willing to fail more and see that as a challenge, and they'll embrace that as part of the journey as opposed to seeing that as the end all be all, right? If I fail, I'm a loser. No, if you fail, you get up and you try again. You fail
Mhm.
and then you fail again. You learn from it. You find out what you did wrong and you tweak it and you try to make it work. And so just among the people that I speak with that are, more willing to share, and the folks that I would consider solos, they're not afraid to share what it is that they're doing because they realize there's plenty of business out there for all of us, and there's a real opportunity to make the industry better. Some loans create other loans, so that's one way to think of it. So anyway, but yeah,
That's a
I
good point.
appreciate the folks that are out there doing that.
Well, talk about, and just one last thing before we have a few takeaways that we need to have for our listeners today. But talk about this issue. What you see with the solution-oriented loan officer is that they are improving their skills. They're doing this independently of their company, but they're working on on improvement. Is that true?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's plenty of mortgage coaches out there. People are seeking their counsel, their advice, their
Hmm.
help. I know people are getting together and talking about how to get better in this business, and so yeah, definitely, I see evidence of that all the time.
Well, I think that's certainly one of the things that I recognize. Well, we only have a few minutes left. What would be some of the takeaways that we would want our listeners to have from today?
So I would encourage anyone who feels stuck, who feels like there are too many challenges in front of them and they just want to try and wait this thing out, to get unstuck. Find someone in their community, find another loan officer that they can talk with, find, others that they can collaborate with and really think through some ideas. Fill your cup is something I like to say a lot nowadays. And just, make sure your cup is full so you can survive in that fire and continue to seek new skills and new opportunities to learn and grow. It will serve you in a big way in the future. We're not that far. Well, no one knows how far we are, I guess, from the next market cycle. But when it comes, it will serve you well if you've got a full cup. So,
I agree with that 100%. How would someone, if they wanted to join this group that you're involved with, how would they, in other words, connect?
Sure. At this point, just reach out to me over LinkedIn, Connor Bartley. I'm with loanDepot, and I'm happy to get it together. Like I said, we're in the very early stages of getting it organized, but it is definitely a passion of mine and something I really want to make a big deal. So just reach out to me and we'll make sure it happens.
And I highly recommend for you to connect with Connor regardless, because he has a fabulous blog. And I don't know how you do it because you post such great information. And so certainly LinkedIn with Connor. And I want to thank Connor for sharing his thoughts. And I want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast. You certainly can catch up on all our episodes by going to www.patsherlock.com and certainly subscribe. Thanks so much, Connor.
Thank you, Pat. It was great.
Thanks for listening to Mortgage Manager Playbook. You can catch up on all our episodes by subscribing to receive each week a new show. Don't forget to share this podcast with your friends and team members. If you're looking to increase production, call me to discuss my prospecting sales training program, Ramping Up Realtor Referral Sources. Check out my website, www.patsherlock.com.